.org. That's, of course, about the Jeffrey Epstein files at the Justice Department. Those are the files to which they reportedly assigned more than 1,000 FBI agents to make sure Trump's name was scrubbed out of them. These are the Justice Department files which have so flummoxed Trump and Republicans. They are now running in circles on this issue. We do expect a vote to release the Epstein files in the House of Representatives tomorrow. We're going to have more on that in a moment and what we can expect in the wake of that vote. I got to say, I also didn't see coming the fact that the FBI, for the first time in its history, has assigned a full-time protective security detail, a SWAT team, no less, to guard the girlfriend of an FBI official. The FBI has never before had a taxpayer-funded security detail for an FBI official's girlfriend. But that's what we're paying for now. The girlfriend of FBI Director Kash Patel has members of the FBI's SWAT team protecting her as if they are private bodyguards, but they are paid for by you. Ken Delanian and Carol Lenig from MS Now, first to report that story today. At the FBI, Kash Patel's office reportedly also sought to increase the monetary value of gifts that he is allowed to receive as FBI director. Because simply, he wants to keep more of the free and valuable stuff people offer him as director of the FBI. So his office reportedly sought an increase in the ceiling on the monetary value of gifts he can keep. There's also, frankly, repulsive new reporting in the New York Times that the Trump administration has now stopped the FBI and other Justice Department personnel not only from working on counterterrorism cases, but also the Trump administration has stopped federal law enforcement officers in multiple agencies from working on child sex trafficking and child exploitation cases. Quote, earlier this year, special agents at Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, found online videos showing violent sexual abuse of an unidentified young child. The HSI agents who are trained to hunt down pedophiles who use the internet to distribute illegal imagery spent weeks analyzing the footage to try to identify the child and to infiltrate the online networks that had shared and may have directed the abuse. But the agents working that case have since been asked to go out in the field and help arrest undocumented immigrants. Those agents' reassignment has hindered progress toward identifying and rescuing the child in that case. The agents, no longer able to spend as much time undercover online, have now lost contact with a key source they had cultivated over years in the online world of abusers. That is reportedly part of a larger pattern in the Trump administration, according to a new investigation from the New York Times. Quote, HSI teams that investigate sex crimes against children in cities including Newark, New Jersey, and Los Angeles have had significant numbers of their special agents dragooned into immigration work instead. At one point, an entire unit of roughly 5 people investigating child exploitation in LA was working immigration duty instead, with agents trying to advance their child exploitation cases on nights and weekends, meaning effectively in their free time. There's also new reporting that in addition to seeking more than $200 million for President Trump himself from the U.S. Justice Department, Trump's DOJ is also reportedly considering giving a huge check to Trump's disgraced former national security advisor, the conspiracy theorist Mike Flynn, the one who pled guilty to lying to investigators about his secret communications with the Russian government. Bloomberg reporting that the Trump Justice Department is in talks to give $50 million to Mike Flynn. That would be $50 million of your dollars, taxpayer dollars. Because sure, why not? Law and order. Then there's the new top lawyer Trump has just moved to install at the General Services Administration, the GSA. GSA is in charge of federal real estate. This usually is not a very high-profile agency. But in this administration, we've got the president literally bulldozing the White House and dumping the debris randomly on public golf courses. So all of a sudden, this previously low-profile agency is right at the heart of Trump weirdness and destruction. Trump has reportedly now found a perfect candidate to be a new top lawyer at the GSA. He is reportedly installing there a guy whose nomination for a different job had to be pulled a couple of weeks ago when it emerged that he had said about himself, quote, I do have a Nazi streak in me. Well, now Mr. Nazi Streak will be a senior official in charge of federal buildings and federal real estate. Just a little streak of Nazi, self-proclaimed Nazi. Just a little bit. Then there's the news that President Trump was caught apparently using an auto pen, or at least somehow producing an exact replica signature to sign multiple new pardons for people convicted of other crimes besides just the January 6th crimes for which he had already given them pardons. The White House removed images of the apparently auto-penned pardons and replaced them with new signatures when they were caught out. There's also new reporting in the Washington Post that in the bizarre conspiracy theory case they are trying to bring to relitigate the Russia investigation from the 2016 campaign, the federal prosecutor's office they have given that case to is reportedly having to seek outside lawyers to prosecute that case because I guess no actual prosecutors in that U.S. Attorney's office are willing to do it. So yeah, that is all broken over the last few days. When I said last week at this time that some legal stuff was going to be coming due this week and it was likely to be bad news for the Trump administration, I was not wrong about that, but I wasn't expecting any of that stuff I just described. That's all gravy. What I just described is all in addition to what I was actually warning about. What I was actually warning about this time last week was the collapse that has now apparently started of Trump's marquee headline revenge prosecutions of his supposed political enemies. Headline, New York Times, judge says Trump Justice Department may have committed misconduct in James Comey case. Quote, a federal magistrate judge said today that the criminal case against James Comey, the former FBI director, could be in trouble because of a series of apparent errors committed in front of the grand jury by Lindsay Halligan, the inexperienced prosecutor picked by President Trump to oversee the matter. The judge's statement is what the Times describes as a, quote, remarkable rebuke of Lindsay Halligan. Headline at what remains of the Washington Post tonight on the same subject, quote, federal judge blasts potential government misconduct in Comey case. And indeed, the judge's ruling really is blistering. It accuses the Justice Department of illegally, quote, rummaging through evidence, of, quote, inexplicably failing to obtain proper search warrants, of putting an FBI agent before the grand jury in a way that was, quote, highly irregular. Worst of all, the judge's ruling accuses Lindsay Halligan herself of making, quote, fundamental and highly prejudicial misstatements of the law to the grand jury. The judge describing a, quote, disturbing pattern of profound missteps. Quote, the court finds that the government's actions in this case, whether purposeful, reckless, or negligent, raise genuine issues of misconduct. That's not going very well. And oops, that finding from that judge in the Comey case came today immediately before New York Democratic Attorney General Tish James was due, also in the same court, to file her own motion to dismiss the prosecution that's been brought against her. Quote, this indictment is the product of months of illegal and unethical behavior by government officials, only made possible by the misuse of a federal agency, the disregard of exculpatory evidence, the systematic removal of ethics officials and career prosecutors who stood in the way, and the improper attempt to install an unqualified U.S. attorney with nothing to offer except undying loyalty. If this brazen, continuous disregard for the law and the Constitution is not outrageous government conduct, nothing is. From the motion to dismiss. And that, of course, follows new reporting in the Wall Street Journal that the Trump appointee who crusaded to bring this case against Tish James, his name is Bill Pulte at the Federal Housing Finance Agency. There's new reporting in the Wall Street Journal that he reportedly had to fire his way through basically all the oversight and ethics officials at his own agency because they were looking into whether he was breaking the law, whether he was acting improperly in accessing information about Tish James to try to gin up this case. If this is not outrageous government conduct, nothing is. So that's all of that blowing up all at once. And you could see it coming, right? You could see it coming from like the way the two sides were arrayed each other there. against each other there, right? With James Comey and Tish James and the real lawyers who they brought in to defend them against the clown car that the Trump administration has made of the U.S. Department of Justice. And I will tell you, this is a consequential thing. It's not just like point and laugh, although it is point and laugh. It's consequential. Their shambolic and terrible, irretrievably D-list lawyering, their failure to get even the basic stuff right when it comes to the legality of what they're trying to do, turns out to be a compounding problem for them. Because when they take actions against their perceived enemies, or they take actions to try to advance the president's radical agenda, or they take actions to fire people they're not allowed to fire, or to close agencies they're not allowed to close, or to do things they're just not allowed to do, they inevitably get challenged. And when they get challenged, almost all the time they lose. And when they lose, the courts brush them back and not only stop them what they're doing from doing what they're doing in that instance, but the courts frequently enjoin the Trump administration from trying to do anything like it again. And so this is not just stupid. It's really consequential for them, and getting more so over time. It means their bad lawyering on their bad ideas is narrowing and narrowing and narrowing their room to act and their room to maneuver against the American people. Take, for example, the city of Chicago, from which Trump's federal immigration agents have just retreated in defeat. On their way out the door, Trump's immigration agents left behind them a federal judge ordering the release of more than 600 people who Trump's agents just arrested in Chicago. Why did those people all get released? Because Trump's agents allegedly arrested those people illegally in a way they should have known the courts would not allow, so all those people have now been sprung. Remember the big, showy, made-for-TV apartment building raid they did in Chicago early on, where they smashed in all the doors of this apartment building? They had people literally rappelling out of Black Hawk helicopters like they were playing a war game. They made lots of TikTok videos and YouTube videos about themselves doing that operation because they thought it made themselves look so cool. That whole thing, turns out, we now know, resulted in precisely 0 criminal charges being brought against anyone. And I don't know, maybe that's because who in the government is going to want to explain to a judge that, yes, Your Honor, this arrest was part of that thing we filmed for YouTube where we pulled little kids and old people and dozens and dozens and dozens of U.S. citizens out onto the street in the middle of the night in their pajamas and zip-tied their hands together and reportedly segregated those people by race while we left them sitting outside for hours with their hands tied while their apartments were ransacked and the building was all but destroyed, and then we left. You want to explain that to a judge? You want to try to make those charges stick in that case? Literally 0 criminal charges brought against anyone from that operation. And yes, they did succeed in terrorizing and brutalizing the people of Chicago. But that also had the effect of galvanizing the people of Chicago against the Trump administration and his immigration agents. Big protests, small protests, instantaneous, instinctive neighborhood protests everywhere they showed up. Thousands and thousands of people in Chicago starting to carry whistles with them everywhere they went so they could sound the alarm whenever Trump's immigration agents showed up anywhere. Rapid response groups forming in every neighborhood to surround churches and schools and businesses to try to make sure that those masked agents not only felt like they were being watched, but they knew that they were being both watched and recorded every single second they were on the street being berated by the good people of Chicago. At the Broadview ICE facility, the protests never let up. And the brutal tactics used there against protesters of all kinds, including multiple ministers who were beaten and hurt while protesting peacefully there, many of them in their clerical clothing while they were beaten in Broadview. Images like these seem to have only had the effect of drawing out yet more clergy of all kinds, more faith communities, to stand up even more, including at Broadview, to say we are against this. We stand with the people who are being terrorized here. What the government is doing is wrong, and we feel called to respond. The whole Chicago misfire by the Trump administration, I will say, it seems, among other things, to have galvanized and maybe even radicalized the American Catholic Church in particular on this issue. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops lining up to stand with immigrants, to stand with immigrant communities against what Trump is doing. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops just issued their first special message since 2013. Their first message like this in more than a decade, opposing what the bishops called the indiscriminate mass deportation of people. Listen, I mean, whether or not you're Catholic or you care about the political suasion of the Catholic Church, the brand new Pope, the first ever American Pope, is from Chicago. You decide to commemorate that occasion, Trump, by shooting less than lethal munitions at priests on multiple occasions in Chicago? Arresting them for trying to give people communion? In Chicago? Great move. What did you think was going to happen? Trump's immigration agents are not only constrained in terms of their available tactics for use of force, thanks to a federal judge reviewing the use of force by Trump's agents in and around Chicago. The Broadview facility specifically just got an in-person visit from a federal judge, a judge who was weighing whether or not the conditions at that facility are so abominable that that facility should potentially be shut down. How is the Trump administration doing in handling the legal responsibilities of that big deal challenge? Well, I don't know. Headline. Quote, irretrievably destroyed. Trump administration says video footage inside ICE facility at center of class action lawsuit, quote, cannot be produced in line with court's discovery order. The U.S. Justice Department admitted to the apparent snafu in a 10-page joint written status report on discovery. Chief among the missing files is 13 days worth of video footage recorded at the ICE facility in the Chicago suburb of Broadview. Defendants have indicated that some video between October 19th and October 31st, 2025 has been irretrievably destroyed and therefore cannot be produced on an expedited basis or at all. Oh yeah, the court's going to love that. Judge is going to love that. That's going to go great. They're really bad at this. And in particular, they're terrible lawyers. And because of that, increasingly, the people they arrest will be set free. The places they want to lock people up will be shut down. Their tactics will be constrained by court orders. And at the same time, the American communities they are terrorizing will, over time, get better and better and better at standing up to them as they learn from one another. You probably saw the AP headline this weekend. Immigration crackdown inspires uniquely Chicago pushback. That's now a model for other cities. A model for other cities. Coverage like this is focused in the last couple of weeks on the rapid response groups in Chicago, the whistles that everybody in Chicago is carrying now, the protests, large and small, the Know Your Rights trainings in Chicago. I will also note a new development in the protest tactics there. These protests this weekend in Chicago and actually all over Illinois. This tactically, I got to say, is very smart. These folks are protesting not generically against the Trump administration. They are protesting at AT&T stores because they are trying to pressure AT&T to give up their gazillion-dollar contracts with the Department of Homeland Security and ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. They want to keep enjoying, they're telling AT&T, if you want to keep enjoying retail customers in communities where ICE and CBP are terrorizing people, you should give up your contracts with ICE and CBP, or it's going to be very uncomfortable. There's effectively going to be protests and pickets outside AT&T stores that are going to cut into your bottom line. Protesting against public-facing entities and businesses that are helping the Trump administration with the worst of what they are doing. This is an emerging tactic. We saw it was so effective at getting Elon Musk out of the Trump administration when protesters targeted Tesla. We saw it was so effective when protesters targeted not Brendan Carr and the FCC and the Trump administration, but ABC and Disney and Nexstar and Sinclair and the other public-facing entities that were doing Trump's dirty work. We saw it with the targeting of Avelo Airlines. Wants to be a private contractor to Trump for ICE and also provide commercial flights to the American people? No. not without a lot of hullabaloo, not without a lot of protest. We're going to see more and more of tactics like these. This weekend, we saw protests starting, big ones, in Charlotte, North Carolina, as Trump's immigration agents moved to Charlotte for some reason. Protests in Charlotte this weekend, also in Asheville, North Carolina, and in Raleigh, North Carolina, the state capital. Big protests in both of those places. People coming out all over the state. Advocates for immigrants in North Carolina have created already this online map showing where federal immigration agents are known to be operating in North Carolina. We're going to be checking in live in just a moment with one of the groups that's been organizing furiously in Charlotte in preparation for the attack that Trump is now launching on that city. We've got a reporter at one of their trainings tonight in Charlotte. It was a full house, not an empty seat in the place. But Trump's agents, they attacked L.A. first, and L.A. stood up against them. Their pushback in L.A. helped Chicago fine-tune its own response when Trump next attacked Chicago. The pushback in Chicago is now helping Charlotte scale up its own response now that Trump is attacking there. But again, never underestimate just how dumb they can be, especially when it comes to their lawyering, when it comes to the basic legal reasoning and defense of their radical actions, right? Trump's new attack on Charlotte, North Carolina, for example, they say it's not being led by ICE, it's being led by CBP, by Customs and Border Patrol. Now, by CBP's own admission, they're only supposed to be operating within 100 miles of the U.S. border. Charlotte, North Carolina is way more than 100 miles from any border. Charlotte, North Carolina is more than 170 miles even from the coast. So what's CBP doing there? I mean, with the kind of legal eagles these guys have working for them, maybe they're thinking nobody will check that. Maybe they didn't know that 170 is a bigger number than 100. I don't know. How do you check that? Protests against Trump are going to take on a slightly different cast this week, and this is worth watching. Today, you might have seen footage of people protesting in Washington, D.C., right around the White House. In fact, they wrapped the White House in yellow crime scene tape today. This protest today in D.C. was under the banner of Trump must go. And I got to tell you, it was, I think, intended to be a bit of a warm-up for what they are expecting later on this week. They're expecting to be large numbers of people protesting in Washington later on this week. And that's technically interesting because unlike the No Kings events and the hands-off protests and the 50-51 events of various stripes, which have really deliberately been decentralized, they've happened all over the place, all 50 states, everywhere, all at once. This week, organizers are asking people to come to Washington, to come on Thursday to lobby Congress. They say they want Congress to impeach, convict, and remove Trump from office. They are expecting it to be a really large lobby day on Thursday in Washington. And then on Saturday, one big central protest in Washington at the Lincoln Memorial with that same demand to impeach him, convict him, and remove him from office. Do you know the band, the Dropkick Murphys, legendary Boston band? The Dropkick Murphys are not shipping up to Boston. They are going to be shipping down to D.C. to basically headline that protest at the Lincoln Memorial this Saturday at noon, which means it should at least be loud and in the best possible way. Tonight, we've got live reports from Charlotte coming up, and we've got a live report from Oregon, where a little town in Oregon appears to have succeeded in standing up and maybe stopping Trump from putting an ICE facility in their town. There's a lot to learn in that story and what that town has done. That's coming up here tonight. Lots to get to. Stay with us.
Most pet food looks like this. But not the farmer's dog. It looks like real food because it is real food. Made to human-grade standards and gently cooked to give your dog the nutrients they need without the ultra-processing. Because good ingredients matter, but the best recipes call for so much more. Get 50% off your first box, available only at thefarmersdog.com.
Check it out. Now that I've reevaluated my workplace benefits and retirement savings with Voya, I'm feeling great. How's your retirement plan going?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm ignoring it and hoping for the best.
Ignoring it?
And hoping for the best.
Well, Voya is helping me make the right benefit and investment choices for my future.
Check this out, though. Come on, good retirement. Cool, right?
Don't just hope for a strong future, plan for one with Voya. Plan, Invest, Protect.
Tired of struggling with impossible messes in your tub and shower? Mr. Clean Foaming Bath Magic Eraser cuts through 100% of soap, scum, and grime, while Mr. Clean Extra Durable
As the Trump administration launches attacks on one American city after another, Americans are learning strategies from one another about how to defend themselves, how to fight back, how to keep our neighbors safe, how to stand up to what Trump is doing. As he attacks city after city serially over time, people are learning best practices from the cities that have already been attacked. Serially, that knowledge is accumulating over time, and the American people in each new city he attacks are getting smarter and better resourced at how to stand up to him. In the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, organizers and community members were already doing on-the-ground work in preparation even before Trump's latest attack started on that city over this weekend. A local immigrant rights group called Siembra North Carolina, started a project they call Defend and Recruit in Charlotte. They've published guides, they've published videos for what to do if federal immigration agents show up on your block or in your community. They've made posters for people to put on their doors. I got to say, this is my personal favorite. It's in the style of those live, laugh, love signs you'd see at like Home Goods or whatever. Look what it says. In this house, we live like there's room for everyone. We laugh at least once a day, and we love a judicial warrant. If you are a federal agent, you must present a signed warrant to enter. That is very well done. Tonight, the group behind those resources held a community training at a local church in Charlotte. MS Now's Jacob Soboroff was there. And got to look at the turnout. Look at this. Not a single empty seat in this church tonight. On a Monday night, over 300 people showing up to learn what they can do to try to protect their community from Trump's agents, who again started their attack on Charlotte this weekend. People tonight did role-playing exercises, talking about how to conduct safety patrols in your own neighborhood, how to react if you see Trump's masked agents beating people up or snatching people off the streets. Jacob spoke to one of the organizers tonight, a pastor from a nearby town, about what it's like to see his community show up like this.
How does it make you feel to know that all these people showed up on a Monday night and you got many more of these to do?
Yeah, it makes me grateful and reminds me of how much our community loves each other, and our community wants to support. But people don't come out on Monday nights, right, to anything. And so that people are showing up right now and spending their valuable time to learn how to care for each other and protect each other, I don't even have words for it.
Joining us now from Charlotte, North Carolina, is Jacob Soboroff, senior national correspondent for MS Now. Jacob, I'm so glad you were able to get to this tonight. What can you tell us about the event that you were at and what you saw?
Rachel, it was exciting and it was inspiring here at the church tonight in Charlotte in a very, very dark time. There were, as you saw in the video, hundreds of people here on a Monday night when they could be doing just about anything else. And I think it's fair to say, based on some unofficial counts that I've heard from sources here in Charlotte, that may be as many people in this church tonight. And there were 4 other trainings. Others have been scheduled here in North Carolina as federal agents on the ground conducting these operations. And Siembra has been in existence for a long time, since 2017. They have been preparing for this moment since the first Trump administration. But it was only now, with these community meetings already planned, and then the Border Patrol and ICE showed up, that they're really able to sort of effectuate all of this. And it isn't just kumbaya and holding hands. Some of the people that have been inside have already been to some of the trainings. And one woman, Jenny, I want to show you this. She told me that these trainings are not only for people to stand up and resist, but they actually work. They're protecting their fellow residents here. Watch this.
What's the most important thing that you've taken away from being at these trainings and actually being out in the field in the face of the Border Patrol being here?
I think obviously watching someone literally being detained, but I felt like our presence and the way that the rest of the folks in the parking lot at the grocery store where we were located, the community coming together prevented that from being executed. They let them go.
They let him go. They let him go.
Rachel, it's all very practical. I mean, in that case, Jenny, this teacher said they let someone go when the Siembra volunteers showed up to one of these raids. They hand out flyers like this to say what to do if you're detained. And I think, perhaps most importantly, like you said, they are learning from the other cities. And it's not just all doom and gloom. They even were teaching the people that were inside this church tonight songs to sing, This Little Light of Mine, I'm going to let it shine, when they show up to protect the people of this community. So it doesn't get violent, so it doesn't get adversarial, so it stays positive and uplifting in a moment that's really hard for so many people here.
I see people with whistles. We're seeing the singing that you're describing. It does seem like there's kind of an iterative process where each new city that gets attacked by Trump's agents learns something from the tactics that happened and that were employed by people standing up in the earlier cities to have been attacked. Charlotte didn't have much notice that this was all going to be being brought down upon them as of this weekend. Do you think the organizers are surprised by the turnout that they're getting in terms of these packed houses for the trainings and the large protests that we're already seeing, the way people are responding?
I think in the wake of the No King's Day protests, and there were some leaders of Indivisible locally here this evening, they know that people want to stand up, and they know that people want to push back, and they actually know that these tactics work. They worked for family separation in 2018 when hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people came to the streets in not a bipartisan but a universal condemnation that resulted in the reversal of that policy. And I think that they believe that the same thing can happen now. There is nothing that Stephen Miller wants less, folks inside that church believe, than to hear people and see people smiling and celebrating fellow members of their community in the wake of these tactics where they want nothing more than Stephen Miller wants nothing more for them to be throwing rocks and to be agitators and to play into the narrative that they are creating about a place like this. But I can tell you, I got to Charlotte this afternoon. It is as beautiful as ever. The people are as inspired as ever, and the organizers feel very emboldened that there will be many more people showing up at these trainings in the days and weeks to come. And the timing couldn't have been better, obviously, for the operation that's happening on the ground.
Jacob Soboroff, MS Now senior national correspondent. It's great to have you there tonight, Jacob. Thanks for covering this for us. I really appreciate you being here, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right, we got much more news ahead here tonight. Stay with us.
Imagine if Fresh Sheet Day could become Fresh Sheet Week. With Downy April Fresh, you can climb into more freshness, night after night for up to 7 days. Downy breathes life into your laundry.
From now is the start of Dungeness crab season off the coast of Oregon. Dungeness crab is one of the world's great seafood delicacies. There's nothing like it. But the path to get delicious Dungeness crab onto your plate is a tough and dangerous path. Fishing for Dungeness crab is one of the most dangerous jobs in the United States, statistically speaking. It's difficult work. It's really risky work. And the busiest port for Dungeness crab fishing on the whole West Coast is a cool, beautiful little town called Newport, Oregon. Population just over 10,000. Last week, the people of Newport, Oregon discovered something that is worrying to them, given the town's main industry and how dangerous that industry is. At the small municipal airport in Newport, Oregon, there is a Coast Guard rescue helicopter there, and that is really important in case the Coast Guard needs to spring into action to help one of the fishing fleet vessels that's doing the very dangerous work of fishing for Dungeness crab off of Newport, Oregon. For some reason, last week, the town learned that the Trump administration was taking the Coast Guard rescue helicopter away. That crucial resource, the local Coast Guard rescue chopper, was being moved from their airport in Newport to a new place that is a half an hour away by air, which is life or death, right? There's a group in Newport called the Newport Fishermen's Wives. Their treasurer said in response to this news, quote, "We aren't saying people might die. We're saying people will die." The same day Newport, Oregon learned their rescue helicopter had inexplicably been taken away, officials in the town made an announcement to local residents about what they thought was going on here. They told everybody in town that they thought the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security, was laying the groundwork to convert the Coast Guard facility at their little airport where the rescue helicopter had been. They were laying the groundwork to convert that into an ICE prison instead. So town officials let everybody in town know also that a federal defense contractor had contacted the city about leasing land at the airport facility. Immediately, people in Newport, Oregon started raising hell. They clearly did not want an ICE prison, and they certainly didn't want to give up their Coast Guard rescue helicopter in order to get an ICE prison instead. So the town called a meeting last week, Wednesday. Judging from the turnout at the meeting, that was a smart decision. A reporter from the local station KATU2 described just a remarkable crowd trying to get in.
It is extremely packed. In fact, let me show you. This is the back of the room right now. I'm going to walk you through this right now and flip the camera. Here is a makeshift overflow area. A lot of people watching a monitor, watching what is happening inside of that chamber. This is the entrance. This is how difficult it is to get in. They're stopping people. They're only letting members of the media in, but this is the line to get in. It is so long and so packed that they actually have an overflow room nearby at a rec center. Earlier, we saw a bus that believed to have dropped a lot of people off here so that they could voice their concerns. But you could see protesters out here right in front of the City Hall sign and on the sidewalk protesting the possibility of this ICE facility.
That's how many people turned up. Again, this is Newport, Oregon, which has a population of 10,000 people, and that's how many people turned out, just rip-roaring mad about what the Trump administration is apparently doing to their town. Well, after that meeting, we have learned that the defense contractor that had contacted the town about leasing land at their airport, that defense contractor has now backed out and said, okay, we're not doing it. This is all still a very live issue. The rescue helicopter is still not returned, but the fight is very clearly joined here in this small town in Oregon. As one Newport City councilor put it, quote, maybe somebody thought, oh, it's a small place, it's rural, they're probably quiet, we can overpower them. Quote, we've been underestimated. I can say that again. More ahead, stay with us.
We are living with AFib, and over 500,000 of us have left blood thinners behind for life. We've cut our stroke risk and said goodbye to our bleeding worry with the Watchman implant. Watchman, it's one time for a lifetime.
So how are you feeling about your current money manager?
Well, I feel like we've outgrown them.
Well, she's right. Our lives have changed, and we need more than just mutual funds to help us in retirement.
I understand. At Fisher Investments, we get to know you, your goals, lifestyle, and needs, and then tailor a portfolio just for you.
That's good to hear. Can you help with estate planning?
Yes.
Turn of this life-saving helicopter. 800 people lining up for hour after hour after hour, expressing their concerns. Not one single person in that lineup, by the way, said that we would welcome a detention facility here.
Is there a menu of options that you and your fellow state legislators or indeed town officials may have to choose from in terms of what to do next, how to try to stop this? If you, like your constituents, are as strongly opposed as it sounds like you are to what the federal government may be trying to do here, what can you do to try to stop it? If you're willing to share what you think your plans might be.
We are amassing evidence, but we really don't know what's going on. Our U.S. senators have asked, our governor has asked, the city has asked, I've asked. Nobody will tell us exactly what the plan is. If we knew what the plan is, then we can start to look at how does this affect zoning? What are the consequences to our local economy? What about the fact that this airport is just a few feet above the tsunami inundation zone? If God forbid, we should have a major earthquake while people are locked up there. There are a lot of different things that we can do once we know what the plan is, but nobody is telling us what the plan might be. That's not how government is supposed to work. We expect transparency, we expect honesty, we expect clarity so that we can respond in the same way.
Yeah, when you have to do something secretly to try to avoid what you know will be the local backlash and resistance, that's a sign that maybe small d democracy isn't proceeding along the lines we learned about in school. Oregon state legislator Dave Gomberg, who represents Newport, Oregon, which is now in this fight. Sir, thank you for helping us understand. Keep us apprised.
We'll be happy to do so. Thank you again very much for your interest tonight.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Do it for me tonight. But now it's time for the last word with the great Lawrence Donnell, good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. Your coverage around the country about what's happening in this kind of resistance that we've never needed before and never seen before is really inspiring to see people out there just taking this situation as it comes, unpredictably, and innovating and in this collective way to protect other people, to protect their neighbors. Really remarkable to watch.
Yeah, it's what's interesting to me now is that we're now seeing enough of a pattern from the Trump administration that we're seeing cities learning from each other. Best practices being passed on, people learning what works both legally but also practically, which I think is going to be really important moving forward.
Well, and Rachel, a certain amount of that learning is actually happening, I believe, in your hour. I think people around the country are seeing what you're presenting other people are doing and showing this is what's happening here. Here's what's going on in Charlotte. Here's what they're doing. And other places in the country are watching that. They're taking notes. And when it comes their way, they are learning about how to rise up to this.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Lawrence, to see later this week. We are expecting a protest in Washington. All of the other protests have not centered on Washington thus far. The 50-51 protests, the hands-off protests, the No Kings protests. But this weekend, this Saturday, noon on Saturday at the Lincoln Memorial, is going to be a protest in Washington, preceded by a bunch of people lobbying their members of Congress on Thursday. And it's going to be really interesting to see if the tenor and the feel that we've got right now in the country manifests in Washington with a big day of protest like I think we're going to see.
Well, there's also that big groundswell of apparently Republican votes for releasing the Epstein files in the House of Representatives and now also very clearly in the Senate. So there's these two giant waves now coming into Washington. Donald Trump's not going to like either one of them.
That's exactly right. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you. Well, as Air Force One was landing last night, after another taxpayer-funded weekend trip to Florida, Donald Trump tweeted the most dramatic and important reversal of his political career, even more important than his admission in September of 2016 that he had been lying about President Obama's birth certificate since 2011. Donald Trump began his reversal last night in writing with a lie, saying, quote, "As I said on Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files." He never said that on Friday night. That was a lie. And so in the biggest reversal of Donald Trump's political career, he had to pretend that he had already reversed himself. And that wasn't a reversal at 9:15 p.m. last night, when Donald Trump tweeted out those words, "House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files." What did it take? What did it take to force him, and you know he was forced, to force him to tweet those words? 51 years ago, 3 Republicans went to the White House to talk to Republican President Richard Nixon to tell him the worst news of his political career. The most famous Republican senator at the time, along with the Republican Senate Minority Leader and the Republican House Minority Leader, sat in the Oval Office with the president, and they told him he was going to lose the biggest vote of his political career in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, and it was going to be a massive vote, more than 2/3 in both bodies. Those Republican congressional leaders told their Republican president that he was going to be impeached by the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives with a massive Republican vote. And he was going to be convicted in the United States Senate, controlled by Democrats, but with a massive Republican vote. And here is what they told reporters gathered in the White House driveway. The first speaker you're about to hear is Senator Barry Goldwater, who had been the Republican nominee for president 9 years earlier. The second speaker you will hear is John Rhodes, then the minority leader of the House, followed by the Senate Minority Leader, Hugh Scott, who reveals the most to those reporters.
We made no suggestions. We were merely there to offer what we see as a condition on both floors. Congressman John?
Well, actually, I have nothing to add except to say that the president did seem to be in good spirits and in good health. And as four old friends, we talked over a situation which, of course, is very painful for all of us.
We have told him that the situation is very gloomy on Capitol Hill and that it is a very distressing situation, and we gave him further evaluations, which I think ought to remain between ourselves.
Very gloomy on Capitol Hill, very distressing situation. The day after Hugh Scott described that very distressing situation, Richard Nixon announced he was resigning the presidency. Is John Thune the new Hugh Scott? Senator John Thune has Hugh Scott's old job in the Senate as the Republican leader. Donald Trump already knew, as we were reporting last week, that there was probably going to be more than enough votes in the House of Representatives to vote to release the Epstein files. The number built toward the end of the week to indicate from reliable sources that there could be 100 Republican votes in the House of Representatives, in addition to the 214 Democrats, to release the Epstein files. That kind of vote in the House of Representatives would create enormous pressure in the United States Senate, pressure that John Thune must have decided he would not be able to sidestep. John Thune must have calculated two things. First, if the Democrats asked for a vote in the Senate on releasing the Epstein files, they could easily pass the 60-vote threshold required to force that vote in the Senate. John Thune had to calculate what the final vote count would be. And there is a very strong chance that John Thune's vote count went well over 90 and possibly close to 100, if not 100 exactly, including John Thune himself. And that meant that Donald Trump could not count on the Senate blocking a vote to release the Epstein files. That meant that the bill to release the Epstein files would pass the House, pass the Senate, and would end up on Donald Trump's desk, where he would have the decision to sign or veto a bill that would probably have landed on his desk with a veto-proof majority already in both the House and the Senate. Mike Johnson, the weak Republican Speaker of the House, could not deliver that news to Donald Trump. He could not speak for the United States Senate. Only John Thune could. And so the question is something the history books will answer for us, or probably other investigative reporting much sooner than that. The question is, who told Donald Trump what was going to happen in the House and, more importantly, in the United States Senate, especially the Senate? Who was the Hugh Scott this time? Who was the Barry Goldwater? And did the Republicans dare tell this directly to Donald Trump? Or was it communicated just to Donald Trump's White House chief of staff or someone else who could have the pleasure of then delivering the bad news to the bad president? If Donald Trump thought John Thune could block a vote on the Epstein files, Donald Trump could have held on to the position he's held on to every day of his presidency, that the Epstein files should never be released. The Trump legal team, formerly known as the Justice Department, announced that the case was officially closed on July 7th of this year in an unsigned written statement saying, quote, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have conducted an exhaustive review of investigative holdings relating to Jeffrey Epstein. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. It is the determination of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. The reason it was impossible for any previous administration to release the Epstein files is that the criminal investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein and the criminal investigation of his convicted co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell were underway during those previous administrations. Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal to the United States Supreme Court was still pending through the end of the Biden administration into the Trump administration. And so it would have been inappropriate to release the Epstein files until Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal was rejected by the United States Supreme Court and until the Trump legal team announced that they were formally closing the case on July 7th. That made that case closed announcement on July 7th at the very same time that they announced that they would not ever, under any circumstances, release a page of the Epstein files. That was the July 7th position that Donald Trump and his legal team at the Justice Department believed that they could hold for the rest of the Donald Trump presidency and beyond. That position lasted exactly 132 days. And then Donald Trump completely reversed his position last night, saying that every Republican in the House should vote to release the Epstein files, which means logically that every Republican in the Senate should vote to release the Epstein files. And then today, Donald Trump was asked if he would sign a bill delivered to him after passage in the House and the Senate to release the Epstein files, and he said this.
You urged House Republicans to vote in favor of this Epstein release bill they're going to vote on tomorrow. I just want to be super clear on your position. Do you want to see that pass the Senate? Would you sign that bill if it gets to your desk?
I do want to. Here's what I want. We have nothing to do with Epstein. The Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. Some of the people that we mentioned are being looked at very seriously for their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein. But they were with him all the time. I wasn't. I wasn't at all.
Reality note. Just have to interrupt here. Donald Trump spent more time with Jeffrey Epstein than any other political person mentioned in the Epstein files. Donald Trump is the only person, the only politician in the Epstein files who we've seen, as we are seeing right now, him captured on video and photographs, constantly partying with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein said he was Donald Trump's closest friend for 10 years, and he said that on tape. So no, the people Donald Trump wants to pretend were with Jeffrey Epstein all the time, as he put it, were not with Jeffrey Epstein nearly as much as Donald Trump was with Jeffrey Epstein at the peak of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal conduct before Jeffrey Epstein was ever charged with a crime. Here is how Donald Trump finished that answer about would he sign the legislation ordering the release of the Epstein files.
I'm for any. I don't. They can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much because honestly, I don't want to take it away from us. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends.
In a tweet, Donald Trump threw Bill Clinton's name on a list of men and told this lie. Records show that these men and many others spent large portions of their life with Epstein and on his island. Stay tuned. Jeffrey Epstein himself, in writing, said Bill Clinton never set foot on Jeffrey Epstein's island. Bill Clinton has said he never set foot on Jeffrey Epstein's island. And the records we have now of Bill Clinton's flights on Jeffrey Epstein's plane do not indicate that Bill Clinton spent more than 2 trips to Europe and Africa on the Epstein plane, with a number of stops on each of those trips in Europe and Africa that looks like a lot of flights, but they are really just one trip with multiple stops. Those trips are less than 2 weeks long. And so the Epstein files are still really about Donald Trump, no matter what Donald Trump tries to say. And Donald Trump proves that he thinks the Epstein files are about Donald Trump because he has decided that his otherwise flawless ally, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is now what he calls a traitor because she was one of the original Republicans in the House supporting a vote on the release of the Epstein files. And Donald Trump, in tweets now, even after saying Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files, calls Marjorie Taylor Greene wacky Marjorie Traitor Brown and a traitor to our country. Marjorie Taylor Greene says those attacks by Donald Trump are putting her life in danger. And now Marjorie Taylor Greene is joining me in calling Donald Trump a liar something I've been doing since 2011. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, President Trump just attacked me and lied about me. It's astonishing, really, how hard he's fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out, and he actually goes to this level. But I don't worship or serve Donald Trump. Most Republicans in the House and Senate have and do worship and serve Donald Trump. But if they see one or two, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, not just survive by defying Donald Trump, but beat him, win in their defiance of Donald Trump, beat Donald Trump, beat him publicly, then Donald Trump's grip on this government is looser tonight than it was yesterday. There's going to be a massive rebellion against Donald Trump in the House of Representatives when that vote is conducted tomorrow, and Donald Trump knew that. He knew that that vote was coming. And so Donald Trump has been trying to label it as something other than a rebellion. Donald Trump is trying to label it as, now they're following his orders to vote to release the Epstein files. Thomas Massie has correctly identified what Donald Trump is really up to. And Donald Trump revealed that in a tweet on Friday when he said, quote, I will be asking AG Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots at the FBI, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, J.P. Morgan Chase, and many other people and institutions to determine what was going on with them and him. And so there's Donald Trump saying Pam Bondi was wrong on July 7th. The FBI was wrong. The Justice Department was wrong on July 7th when they put in writing that in their case closed statement, quote, we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. And now Donald Trump has decided that uncharged third parties like Bill Clinton must be investigated, even though the Pam Bondi Justice Department and the Kashyap Patel FBI issued a written statement saying there's absolutely no evidence to do that. There is no predicate at all for investigating Bill Clinton or any other names in the Epstein files. And that's why it's not the Justice Department anymore. That's why it's the Trump Revenge Department. And Donald Trump will order an investigation of Bill Clinton and any other name in the Epstein files that he doesn't like. And that investigation, ordered by Donald Trump, will once again seal off the Epstein files, no matter what the vote in the House or Senate is. And that is the scheme, correctly identified by Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, who Donald Trump has been attacking since the day Thomas Massie launched his crusade to release the Epstein files. And Thomas Massie, and this is a lesson to all Republicans, Thomas Massie is still standing. Thomas Massie beat Donald Trump. Here is Congressman Massie yesterday, before Donald Trump told all Republicans to vote for the release of the Epstein files.
I think we could have a deluge of Republicans. There could be 100 or more. I'm hoping to get a veto-proof majority on this legislation when it comes up for a vote. And, you know, the president's been saying this is a hoax. He's been saying that for months. Well, he's just now decided to investigate a hoax, if it's a hoax. And I have another concern about these investigations that he's announced. If they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
And tonight, Thomas Massie, who continues to prosecute his case, added to that observation about the smokescreen Donald Trump will try to create to block the release of the Epstein files, no matter how big the vote is in the House and the Senate.
Well, I'm concerned that now he's opening a flurry of investigations, and I believe they may be trying to use those investigations as a predicate for not releasing the files. That's my concern.
You think they'll try to block it?
Well, they will. I'm afraid they're going to try to use a provision of the law that allows you not to release these materials if they're subject of an ongoing investigation and would harm, and the release of which would harm the ongoing investigation. So what do you think? If they're serious about it, they should release them right now. So
I do believe they'll try to stop it somewhere else, and that's going to backfire on them too.
Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. He's the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee leading the pursuit of the Epstein files. Congressman Garcia, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I just want to pick up where Congressman Massey just left off, where he's identified what he believes is the scheme here to try to suddenly start an investigation of Bill Clinton and other people, even though the Justice Department has already said there's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing to investigate, no reason to do it. But that investigation, involving a grand jury possibly, would then lock up these documents legally. But Congressman Massey says he believes you can continue to fight even through that smokescreen to try to get them.
I think I lost you there.
So I'm just wondering, Congressman, if you agree with Thomas Massey that there's a way of continuing to push for these Epstein files, even if Donald Trump's trying to create a legal smokescreen to block their release, even after the vote.
Yeah, well, let me just start by saying that I agree with Thomas Massey. I think this is absolutely what Donald Trump is trying to do. When you have someone that's been obsessed from day one in trying to cover up, to deflect, to campaign, first he wants him released, then he doesn't. His actions over the last week have been outrageous. What he did with Lauren Boebert, bringing her into the Situation Room. This is clearly somebody now that began to panic. And so this last flip-flop is clearly devised as a strategy to continue to cover up the Epstein files. Now, we think through our work, through the subpoena work we've done through the Oversight Committee, we've got other legal avenues in front of us. We have a plan in place to try to ensure that we get those files regardless of what Donald Trump tries to do in this investigation. But it's clear he is setting up another chapter to deflect and to try to ensure that survivors don't get any justice. And so I got to hand it to Thomas Massey. He's been a true partner and hero, but he's absolutely right here.
I'm going to ask you a question that I would not have asked you last week. Is it possible you're going to get a unanimous vote in the House of Representatives?
It is possible. Look, we had a goal of trying to get, first we thought if we can get 25 Republicans, that would be a huge win. Then we thought maybe we can get 100, and it was looking like we could last week. We were going to get 100 Republicans likely before Donald Trump began to panic. And now it's looking like there's a strong possibility we're going to get a unanimous vote. And if that's the case, it compels John Thune in a very big way to actually take that vote. So we think it's very possible.
Yeah, there's no way the Senate can ignore a massive vote like this coming out of the House. And that's something that it seems like someone already communicated to Donald Trump, that you won't be able to stop a vote in the Senate.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think that Donald Trump, he even said that he would sign it. What people need to remember with all of this back and forth is that Donald Trump right now, today, has the power to release the files. He doesn't even need a vote of the Congress. There's a subpoena in place from a committee. He can release all the files right now, but he chooses not to because he's leading this cover-up. Pam Bondi's involved with the cover-up. Mike Johnson is complicit in this cover-up. And so Donald Trump's going to do whatever he can to protect himself, protect his wealthy friends, and to ensure that the truth doesn't come out. But what Donald Trump needs to remember, and I've said this also to the DOJ, is there are hundreds of hardworking, good civil servants, FBI agents, law enforcement officials that have worked to put these files together. There are many people that know what's in these files and who are not going to allow Donald Trump from hiding, destroying, or not letting us get to the truth.
Congressman Robert Garcia, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. And coming up, a new report in the New York Times interviewing 60 Justice Department officials who have been fired or forced to resign by Donald Trump contains this quote from former Justice Department official Dina Robinson, quote, "I wouldn't even call it the Justice Department anymore. It has become Trump's personal law firm." Senator Amy Klobuchar of the Senate Judiciary Committee joins us next.
Is your ass?
You know, we've already given 50,000 pages.
President Trump does an about-face. He says House Republicans should vote to force release of the Epstein files, claiming we have nothing to hide.
It's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax.
Also tonight, a military buildup in Puerto Rico. Thousands of U.S. troops. Will they be heading to Venezuela?
Turkey prices are up 40%.
It's not what you want to hear the week before Thanksgiving.
Are tariffs having an impact at all on grocery prices?
If I can do this, I can do anything.
And a college quarterback.
We are anonymous. We do not serve kings. We do not worship predators. We do not look away when the powerful bury their secrets under 20,000 emails and decades of silence. Tonight, we walk straight into the heart of a story Donald Trump and his inner circle hoped would never reach the public. A story drawn not from rumor, but from messages, correspondence, and digital footprints left behind in Jeffrey Epstein's trove of more than 20,000 emails obtained by the House Oversight Committee. These emails reveal a web of conversations, perceptions, complaints, insults, political strategizing, and descriptions that shed light on how Epstein and people around him viewed Donald Trump, interacted with him, and talked about him. Some of these emails have gone viral, but the majority remain largely unknown to the public. And when you read them, when you follow the threads one by one, the shape of the story becomes clearer, deeper, and far more troubling than anything in yesterday's headlines. You've already seen the email where Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell back in April 2011, referring to Trump as the dog that isn't barking, noting that a victim spent hours with Trump at Epstein's house and saying that Trump has never been mentioned by investigators. Maxwell replies that she has been thinking about it. That alone would dominate any news cycle. But it is only one tile in a mosaic of conversations that stretch from 2009 all the way through Trump's first term in office. I went through every single email, all 20,000. And as you follow their timestamps, read the names, and cross-reference the events, the image that emerges is of Jeffrey Epstein observing Trump, commenting on Trump, sometimes mocking him, sometimes advising people around him, sometimes describing interactions he claims to know about, and sometimes positioning himself as someone who understands the psychological vulnerabilities of the 45th president. One early email from 2015 shows Epstein writing to journalist Landon Thomas Jr., describing Trump walking almost straight into a glass door while focused on young women swimming in the pool. Epstein jokes about Trump leaving his nose print on the glass. It's a disturbing voyeuristic detail, but it sets a tone Epstein portraying Trump as fixated, careless, and impulsive. The sort of private anecdote people only share with someone they believe will understand exactly what they mean. Other messages escalate. Epstein writes to former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers saying he has met bad people in his life, but none as bad as Trump, adding that Trump has not one decent cell in his body, and calling him even grosser in person. These are Epstein's words recorded in private emails, not public statements. Whatever their motivation, they show the perception Epstein claimed to hold about Trump behind closed doors. Then there are the geopolitical messages, the ones that caught my attention immediately. In June 2018, just days before the Helsinki summit between Trump and Vladimir Putin, Epstein emails Torbjørn Jagland, former Prime Minister of Norway. Epstein writes that Putin should hear from Sergei Lavrov, and that Lavrov can get insight on Trump from him. Jagland replies that he will meet Lavrov's assistant on Monday and will suggest it. The tone of the exchange is casual, even friendly, with Jagland thanking Epstein for a lovely evening. Epstein replies that Trump must be seen to get something, describing Trump's psychological need for a win, or at least the appearance of one. Whether these messages reflect true influence or exaggerated self-importance, their content is undeniable. They show Epstein discussing Trump with high-level political figures, positioning himself as someone who studies Trump's ego and behavior, and portraying himself as a conduit of insight into how Trump operates. These emails exist. They have timestamps. They have senders and recipients, and reading them together paints a picture that Trump's inner circle never wanted public. But the emails go deeper still. There's Epstein conversing with individuals tied to modeling networks, including Jean Leblanc, who later died under circumstances many observers noted as strangely parallel to Epstein's own. They talk about bringing a Burmese singer to the U.S., calling her very pretty, mentioning fresh promotional angles around Obama's visit to Myanmar. These exchanges sit uncomfortably in the context of what has long been reported about Epstein's social network. There's Epstein discussing messaging strategies with people who were connected to Trump's political world. Emails suggest he offered opinions on how lawyers should attack Christine Blasey Ford's memory during the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. The tone of these messages shows Epstein inserting himself into political conversations, pointing out vulnerabilities, suggesting rhetorical strategies, and evaluating how Trump's team might handle backlash. Then come the messages where Epstein describes Trump's personality and predictability. He tells Larry Summers that Trump is so dumb he will blame everyone around him, predicting chaos in the White House. He says Jared Kushner and Gary Cohn will be protected, but others will fall. Years later, insiders would confirm Trump's pattern of infighting, paranoia, and blame-shifting behavior Epstein described in private long before those memoirs and interviews emerged. One of the most striking emails comes from a New York Times journalist tipping Epstein off about a former NYPD detective digging into Epstein, and potentially Trump as well. The journalist mentions questions about why Epstein hired Ken Starr. It's a moment that raises questions about access, information flow, and who protected whom and why. Then another bombshell in November 2016, right after the election. Epstein emails to say he is in Trump Tower. Linda Stone asks if he's still in Paris. Epstein replies, "I'm in the Trump Tower." Trump has repeatedly insisted he hadn't spoken to Epstein in years. But this email suggests physical proximity far more recent than Trump has ever publicly acknowledged. Whether Epstein was exaggerating, visiting someone else, or telling a literal truth, the email exists, and that alone is enough to destabilize the carefully crafted narrative Trump has repeated for years. The messages between Epstein and Maxwell show a nuanced picture. Epstein notes that investigators have never mentioned Trump, despite a victim spending hours with him at Epstein's home. Maxwell acknowledges it. Again, this is the content of the email, not a legal determination, but it is part of the written record. More emails show Michael Wolff commenting on a victim at Mar-a-Lago, and Epstein claiming that Trump asked him to resign from Mar-a-Lago, even though Epstein says he was never a member. Epstein writes that Trump knew about the girls and asked Ghislaine to stop. Wolff speculates that Epstein could let Trump hang himself in public statements or support him later if it created a debt. It is a cynical transactional picture, describing a relationship built not on friendship but leverage. Then Epstein writes simply, "I know how dirty Donald is." That line echoes through the inbox like a drumbeat. There are emails referring to the notorious birthday book joke about selling Trump a fully depreciated woman. The newly released messages go further, with Epstein reportedly boasting that he gave Trump his 20-year-old girlfriend secondhand after 2 years.
If you're here in the area and are looking for a solution to heat your home this winter, then this
talked about women. Whether true exaggerated or intended as shock humor, the line sits in Epstein's email archive, and Trump world cannot erase it. There are emails suggesting Epstein was near Trump in 2017, emails about Trump's deposition being scheduled for August 18, 2009, emails showing Epstein receiving information about Trump and Melania in 2019, emails showing Epstein's pilot tracking Trump's plane. Epstein positions himself repeatedly as someone observing Trump's movements, commenting on them, and sharing those comments with people in his circle. And then there is the recorded 2017 conversation, Epstein describing Trump's method for controlling his team by spreading conflicting stories, pitting advisors against each other, and ensuring no one trusts anyone else. Epstein talks about Trump telling Bannon one thing, Kellyanne another, Jamie Dimon another, and creating chaos on purpose. This matches what many former advisors later wrote in their memoirs. Trump thrives on infighting. Epstein's description matches their experiences almost too precisely. And then there's the real estate connection. Epstein references Trump purchasing the West Palm Beach property. Gossman lost in foreclosure a property Epstein wanted, and later selling it in 2008 to a Russian oligarch for $95 million, far above its valuation. Even back then, experts questioned the deal. Epstein's email suggests he saw it as suspicious. It connects yet another dot between Trump, Epstein's orbit, and Russian money. When you assemble everything, all 20,000 emails, all the overlapping conversations, all the names, all the timestamps, all the references, the picture becomes unavoidable. These emails do not represent a distant acquaintance. They reveal an ongoing pattern of commentary.
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, America's most on Disney+, most watched.
Breaking news as we come on the air here on the Jeffrey Epstein files, President Trump's sudden reversal. The House vote coming tomorrow on releasing the Epstein files, and President Trump now this evening telling Republicans to go ahead and vote to release them. Why the shift? Also tonight, U.S. troops in Venezuela. President Trump this evening not ruling out U.S. troops on the ground in Venezuela. To vote tomorrow, it appeared many Republicans were going to join Democrats in voting to release the files. The president now calling on lawmakers to make the documents public. President Trump, who for some time had tried to convince some Republicans not to support this. In fact, one member of Congress was brought into the Situation Room in the White House, where the FBI director and the Attorney General were waiting to try to convince her. It didn't work. The vote comes after the House obtained thousands of documents from the Epstein estate last week, including multiple emails with references to Donald Trump. Tonight, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse delivering new messages, pleading with members of Congress to finally make this happen. And tonight, President Trump is pressed. If the bill passes the House and then the Senate, will he sign it? Mary.
This was complete and utter mayhem. Who thought this would be a good idea? Donald Trump held some event in front of McDonald's franchise owners. And during this event, Trump was just an absolute mess. He couldn't really even speak in complete sentences. He started making noises when he talked about like the fish being sold at McDonald's. He was like, shoop, shoop, shoop. It was very, very odd behavior. And then Donald Trump claimed that everything is much more affordable right now. Then he attacked the idea of raising the minimum wage in a press conference about affordability. Some strange stuff. So let me just show you what went down. Here, Donald Trump says he likes fish and then starts making fish noises. Let's play this clip.
I like the fish. I like it. You could do a little bit more tartar sauce, please. Seriously. You could do a little bit more tartar sauce, please. Seriously. I hate when a little bit more tartar sauce, please. Seriously. You could do a little bit more tartar sauce, please. Seriously.
Much more affordable right now. About affordability. Likes fish.
The fish. I like it. I like the fish. I like it. I like the fish. I like it. You could do a little bit more tartar sauce. I like it. You could do a little bit more tartar sauce, please. Seriously. I hate when I said, do you have any tartar sauce? Do you understand that? Yes, I have. He understands that.
Do not get a consolidation loan until you see this. Hey, Mario Lopez here, and if you're thinking about getting a consolidation...
Then he randomly starts talking about how...
Do you understand? You could do a little bit more tartar sauce.
Noises. Let's play this clip.
I like the fish. I like it. You could do a little bit more tartar sauce, please. Seriously. I hate when I said, do you have any tartar sauce? Do you understand that? Yes, I have. He understands that.
Then he randomly starts talking about how he renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And he says, I know this has nothing to do with McDonald's, but I think I want to tell you this. What is going on? Here, play this clip.
You know what? They went to sugar. Isn't that nice? I said, you got to go to sugar. Just like I said, why is the Gulf of Mexico called the Gulf of Mexico?
So the AI bubble is crashing today, and the question is, how bad is this crash going to get? That's the subject of today's video, and look at our headlines. Market rout intensifies, sweeping up everything from tech to crypto to gold, right? So